What's up guys, Rogue9 here, and now that the new season for Rainbow Six Siege has launched, it's time to look into the gameplay changes in detail to fully understand how they will affect the game with Operation Shifting Tides. You may have already seen the patch notes for the new season, but as always, all is not as it seems. For instance, the Gadget trajectory update is very inconsistent as of now and probably still a work in progress, and the changes to the hostage vulnerability are also flawed in a couple of ways. As always in these videos, there is a pinned comment below with timestamps to each topic in case you already know some parts and want to skip to others. So come, let me show you what's up. By the way, I've done some extensive testing on the weapon changes and operator changes of the new patch, and those will be split out into separate videos, so look out for those on the channel as well. But the gun and operator changes aside, let's just walk through the patch notes and balancing notes one by one and capture everything that is changing. Easily one of the most interesting and exciting changes is the limb penetration system. I've already tested and covered this in depth in a recent video, so I won't be going over it again here, but do see the card on screen now or link in the end card if you want to go back and fully understand this new system. Another nice little quality of life change is the new and updated rappelling system. When nearing the roof of a building while rappelling now, you will need to hit a button to exit the rappel, which will make it much easier to get close to the upper limit of your vertical range without constantly mantling onto the roof by accident. It takes a little while to get used to this system, especially if you're in a hurry to get up and you forget that you will now need to push a button, but once you're in tune with the new system, the added flexibility it will give you is invaluable. Over to the Gadget trajectory asset destruction. The aim here is to standardize how map objects in the game like vases, stacks of paper, PC monitors, etc. interact with projectiles both thrown and shot. The update notes kind of suggest that this is still work in progress, but also claim that this first iteration should allow projectiles to break fragile props that would normally block them. And on a very general basis, that is kind of true. Under the old system, one of two things would happen if your projectile collided with a map prop. The projectile would either pass straight through without doing any damage to the prop at all, or the projectile would bounce off or stop, again without damaging the prop. Now under the new system, all of the props that I tested did break when hit, so that at least is an improvement. But I still have questions around the consistency of what happens to projectiles after the collision, because some projectiles, when interacting with some props, will destroy the prop and then continue onwards, while other times the projectiles could be deflected, they could bounce back, they could just stop and detonate, or worst case scenario, become completely inactive. Some of these behavioral discrepancies have been fixed, and in those cases, the new system works beautifully. Like for instance, before the patch, bottles, laptop screens, PC screens on coastline, bowls and small vases were inconsistent in their interactions. Hibana Pellets would go through the bottles and laptop screens, but would bounce off of the PC screens and bowls. And bizarrely, almost all other projectiles such as grenades, nitro cells, or Zofia's impact grenades were the exact opposite. And you would think that Ash's breaching rounds would be able to go through these flimsy items, but no, they used to get hung up on all of them. After the patch though, these specific props no longer interfere with any of the projectiles you can throw at them. Every projectile will break these objects and then happily continue on its way to wreak death and destruction on whatever lies in its path behind. But this consistency does not apply to all props yet by any stretch of the imagination. Check out these PC screens on Bank for instance. Thrown projectiles will still get deflected here, while Ash charges can get through. Both types of Zofia's grenades, though, will not be able to pass through these screens. This seemingly inconsistent pattern of collision applies to a bunch of props on different maps. The money stacks in Bank, table lamps, money counting machines, files, or the hookah pipes on coastline. Other props, such as these bedside lamps, will still block all projectiles. Or these large vases which will block everything we tested except for Ash's breaching grenades. I think you're starting to get the picture here. This is definitely a step in the right direction, and I fully appreciate that this change still has to be a work in progress, because my assumption is that these interactions have to be fixed by hand, one prop at a time. Nevertheless, the takeaway for you as players needs to be that for the time being, you probably shouldn't rely on being able to simply shoot or throw your projectiles through map props, because while it might work in some instances, it might not work in others, and the last thing you want is to put your trust into a new prop interaction system and then have it backfire on you. The casual game mode has been renamed to Quick Match and will now be taking on the role swap of Pro League, Ranked and Unranked. So teams will go through first all of their attack or defense rounds and then swap over. While playing on the test server, this frequently meant for me that I would only get to play one round after the swap and then the game would be over. Whether or not this undesirable side effect, or at least I think it's undesirable, will translate over onto the main servers when a much larger audience will be playing and the games should theoretically be more balanced, remains to be seen, but I hope not. Another small update that was unannounced is that character models will now take a knee when they get onto cams instead of squatting as if they're trying to complete some CrossFit workout of the day. This is a nice little reversion that makes so much more sense, and hey, maybe we'll get to a point in future where the operators will always kneel when crouched and not moving, because this squat position is literally ridiculous. Nobody, not even elite team rainbow operators, can maintain this position and still hope to be able to discharge their weapons with any reasonable degree of accuracy. But whatevs, there's definitely bigger issues to deal with in this game. Speaking of which, that leads me to our last point, the fixed hostage death mechanics, and if you turn on closed captions you will see that I have written fixed in quotation marks and capitals. Ever since Goyo was added last season, strategies around putting the hostage in a dangerous position and hoping that your opponents will accidentally kill him or her have become a bit of a challenge for the devs to handle, and the final result was just that the hostage became fireproof. Makes no sense whatsoever, but at least it worked from a gameplay perspective. This immunity is now being removed and a new system is being put in place to avoid cheesing tactics. If a defender puts the hostage at risk with their gadget, and this results in the hostage getting downed or killed, the defender will always be blamed as long as the hostage has not been picked up by the attackers yet. As of the in-game rosters right now, this is supposed to apply to Goyo with his Vulcan shields and to Wamai with his magnets. Once the hostage is picked up, then it will be whoever triggers the device who will be blamed for the kill. So if you're attacking and you grab the hostage, deposit them next to a Vulcan shield or a magnet, and then either detonate the shield or throw an explosive gadget into the magnet, you will be blamed for the death. And good news everyone, the system actually works for Goyo. When it comes to Wamai though, those of you who've been playing the test server over the last few weeks may have had instances where this new system does not appear to work. Check this out for instance. I pick up the hostage, drop him next to a magnet, and according to the new rules I should be blamed for the kill when I toss a grenade, but lo and behold, Wamai gets the kill and the attackers win. It took me quite some time and a lot of testing and puzzling to figure this issue out, because sometimes the system works as intended and sometimes it doesn't. But in the end, it turned out to be a very simple issue. When the magnet catches an object, it will self-detonate a split second before the projectile itself goes off, and since the magnet detonation causes between 3 and 5 points of damage to anyone who is close enough at the time, this can, in some cases, actually kill the hostage and overrule the fancy new system that is supposed to fix all of this confusion. You can actively abuse this issue as an attacker by picking up the hostage, escorting them to a nearby magnet, downing them, and then setting off the magnet with any non-lethal projectile. Depending on the hostage's remaining health, this can lead to an instant round win if the hostage is killed by the magnet explosion, or if this is not the case, then at least what will happen is that the fault attribution is switched to the defenders. Downing the hostage is your fault, but then the magnet damage switches the responsibility for the revive to the defenders. Bottom line is that it's a bit of a mess. And it doesn't end there. With the new patch, attackers will also be blamed when the hostage is downed or killed by a Kapkan EDD, as opposed to the past when poor old Kapkan would get the blame. And to be fair, that actually works. Nevertheless, the system is once again not foolproof and can be exploited. All you have to do is drop the hostage near a trap, maybe even down him or her, and then set off the trap, preferably with a big fat shield in front of you. This will then still count as a kill for Kapkan, and the defenders will lose. And that is still not all. Maybe even more confusing than these loopholes is the scoring system. It is completely bonkers. Sometimes both the defender and the attacker will have points deducted for friendly fire on the hostage, sometimes kills will be attributed to one player with the corresponding minus 500 point deduction, but somehow they still win the round. I don't even know what the rules around this are supposed to be, but it's ultra messy and seemingly random right now. Fair point. You could argue that Hostage is a mode that has almost been phased out of Siege nowadays. You can't play it in ranked or unranked, and even in casual, quick match, many players will also keep the mode disabled and you won't really play it much unless you specifically turn off the other modes. So maybe all of this nonsense won't even affect the majority of players anymore, but my take on this is that as long as the game mode is in the game, it should not be this confusing. Phew, and there you have it. All of the gameplay updates of Shifting Tides laid bare in detail. As mentioned in the beginning, keep your eyes peeled for the other videos, one discussing the damage updates to Kavera's, Ella's and the Russian operator's guns, and of course there is also the operator update video that is already out. Until then, many thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you in the next episode.